Interesting development in a case of terrorism. It was three guys who tried to blow up a building full of Muslim immigrants in the middle of the country, and they were convicted of just the offense of weapon of mass destruction. They were trying to use a weapon of mass destruction. So this is as severe a terrorist case as we've had in recent memory in America. Luckily, the FBI caught them. That's why I've been giving the FBI a lot of credit recently, because they have been going around catching these terrorists, no matter which part of the political spectrum they're from, and largely they're from the right wing, obviously, and they are in this case. And so but now their attorneys have a very unique defense in this sentencing portion of the trial. So let me go to HuffPost to tell you about that. Attorneys for President Donald Trump's supporter who was convicted in a domestic terrorism plot aimed at slaughtering Muslim refugees asked the federal judge to factor in the backdrop of Trump's campaign rhetoric when deciding their client's sentence. So this is apparently dealing the Trump card. And is it preposterous to say he should receive a lesser sentence because Donald Trump egged him on? Well, let's hear them out and let's decide whether that is crazy or not crazy. Patrick Stein was one of the three right-wing militiamen found guilty in April of a conspiracy to kill Muslim refugees living in rural Kansas. So here's a picture of Patrick Stein, and he is known as, or at least he referred to himself as, the Orkin Man. Why? Because he thought Muslims were cockroaches and need to be exterminated. Okay? The men allegedly referred to Muslims as cockroaches and said that the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim, because they were worried that Muslims are terrorists. Note the irony of these terrorists who plan to blow up innocent people because they didn't consider them to be human beings but cockroaches that need to be exterminated, saying Muslims only understand violence. Muslims are the terrorists. Okay, the irony of that is, of course, record-breaking. But was he really a fan of Trump? Now, this was before the election, and it was just as the election season was heating up. According to his own lawyer, he was an early and avid Trump supporter. Okay, not only that, they took politics into consideration as to when they were going to do the bombing. The plot was supposed to take place after the election, as the group didn't want their attack to boost Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. So they knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to support Donald Trump, and they wanted to make sure that Hillary Clinton didn't win, and that is why, luckily, they delayed their plot, and then the FBI, with their informant, caught them. Now we're going to go to James Pratt and Michael Shultz. That's this particular gentleman's attorney, and here's what they had to say in what they filed. They said 2016 was lit. The court cannot ignore the circumstances of one of the most rhetorically mold-breaking, violent, awful, hateful, and contentious presidential elections in modern history, driven in large measure by the rhetorical China shop bull who is now our president. In other words, Trump kept saying violent things, which egged on some of his early and avid supporters to do violent things. So we're going to get into his history in a little bit, Patrick Stein's, and you're going to see why they're making that case. He said they continue to say Trump's brand of rough and tumble verbal pummeling heightened the rhetorical stakes for people of all political persuasions. A person normally at a 3 on a scale of a political talk might have found themselves at a 7 during the election. A person like Patrick, who would often be at a 7 during a normal day, might go to an 11. See Spinal Tap. That climate should be taken into account when evaluating the rhetoric that formed the basis of the government's case. Now, I'm not sure you should be quoting Spinal Tap in a case this serious, where he could get a life sentence, but the point is made, which is that Patrick Stein was already an unstable guy, but egged on by the rhetoric of Donald Trump, he became even more unstable and more willing to take action, physical action, violent action, to carry out his ideology, one that he thought was shared by the president. And then, of course, at the time, Donald Trump was all over television saying we have to ban all Muslims from this country because they are a great danger. So, but it wasn't just Trump. Here's another portion of his defense. His lawyers state his knowledge of the Quran, his attorneys wrote, came directly from the internet and conservative talk show hosts such as Sean Hannity and Michael Savage. Patrick himself had never read the Quran, nor had he participated in a comparative study of any religion. Really, this guy had not studied any of the religions. Of course he hadn't. But that's why all of these people have a responsibility to make sure that they're not egging people on with fearful, hateful rhetoric that leads to division and causes them to do extreme actions. So whether it's the right wing like Sean Hannity or others pretending to be on the left who keep telling you the Muslims are the problem, the Muslims are different. They're a unique problem. Bill Maher. And by the way, Sam Harris and Dave Rubin and all those, Ben Shapiro, all those guys, ranging from right, Donald Trump, Shapiro, etc., all the way to people pretending to be on the left. And so all those people who are saying, Patrick Stein, you're right, the Muslims are the problem, And Stein in his mind thinks, well, somebody's got to do something about it. In fact, the guy who just shot up the synagogue and killed 11 people, his last words on one of these extremist websites was, screw the optics, I'm going in. Like somebody's got to do something about it. The Jews are the ones that are paying for the caravan. So I got to go stop the Jews. And by the way, today, Donald Trump, right before we started the show, said, yes, George Soros might be funding the caravan. That same anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. So they egg people on, it's the Jews, it's the Muslims, it's the Jews, Muslims, Latinos, blacks, aren't you gonna do something? And how about Stein? Well, Stein's a ticking time bomb. The attorneys argue that Stein, who had a lifelong struggle with substance abuse and 2 failed marriages, was particularly vulnerable to this sort of rhetoric. Yes, he might have been doing meth as well. So is it purely Donald Trump's fault that they try to bomb these innocent people in the middle of Kansas? Of course not, right? The question isn't whether it's totally Donald Trump's fault or even mainly Donald Trump's fault. The question is, does his rhetoric add to the likelihood that these people are going to take these kind of violent actions? And unfortunately, the answer appears to be yes. Remember, not everybody listening to Sean Hannity or watching Donald Trump is perfectly stable. Like Sean Hannity might think, well, no, nobody I know would take the stuff that I say and do something crazy like this. Everybody at my country club is perfectly pleasant. We all play golf and we talk about how the Muslims are the problem and the blacks and the Latinos are the problem, but we're not gonna go shoot up anybody. We're all rich. We gotta go play golf. Yes, Sean, for you, that's true. But remember, people listening to you are not all in your country club. Some of them have substance abuse problems, some of them have mental problems. And when you go tell them to fear and loathe the others, sometimes they take you seriously. And they took Trump seriously. Now, it doesn't mean that I think that their defense should work. No, at the end of the day, of course you're personally responsible for the actions that you planned out. Donald Trump wasn't in that room. Sean Hannity, Michael Savage were not in that room. Patrick Stein and his 2 guilty co-defendants, and remember, this is the sentencing. They're already judged guilty. They are guilty. They are terrorists. They're the ones who are responsible. So no, I would not listen to the defense here and give him a lighter sentence because he was egged on. But for the country, what matters for our health and our well-being is that our leaders and people in the media not continue to egg on fear and hatred, because yes, it sometimes leads to actions like this. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.